get your essay. I had a chance to look at it. I found it very helpful, very good. We'll have you yet now tell us the story.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much again, Professor Frank Fischer, for inviting me to be part of this project, Professor Piyapong, and all other colleagues that are in the meeting right now. I will try to show you or to share my screen. I hope it works. But just to share with you very briefly the idea of the chapter. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. That's the title. Participatory budgeting is still alive. Main characteristics, challenges, and the future ahead. And so I'm working from the computer of my wife, so I know I don't know exactly how it works here, but let me try to make it work in just a minute. All right. I just changed the slide. Can you see the other slide? The chapter roadmap?
Yes.
Okay. So the chapter is divided in some sections. I will go over them very briefly. I think it is more important to hear your thoughts on the idea. But I know that Professor Frank Fischer knows that already, but people, other colleagues don't know. But I wrote this chapter from a double point of view, let's put it that way, because in the last 10 years, I did research on the topic of participatory institutions, but I also, I think it is important to mention that I started my career working in a PB in my hometown, Fortaleza, which is a capital of a small state in the northeastern part of the country. Okay, just to say that small cities in Brazil are usually like 3 million people, and I know that's different in Germany and other parts of the world, but it's the kind of small city, let's put it that way. And I worked there for 2.5 years, and then after that I participated in a lot of councils and conferences. So it was interesting to me to somehow be able to reflect on that trajectory as well. So the first part of the chapter, I call it Participation, Institutions, and Democracy, a summary of the theoretical debates. And I chose that because I think it's important to place the discussion in the broader perspective, the broader theoretical perspective. The second section, I call it PB in the plural, key characteristics, emergence, and dissemination. The third section is PB as an object of study, at some elements explaining the failures and the success of, and some methodological challenges of the case. The next section, I thought that it would be interesting to bring something new to the discussion, and then I chose to write something very short about PB and its impact on environmental issues. So the section is called A Contemporary Concern, the PB and its impact on environmental issues, and then I draw my conclusions. Okay, regarding the summary of theoretical debates, I start recalling this kind of dichotomy between Joseph Schumpeter's work and Carol Bateman. I'm sure you are all familiar with this discussion, and just to remember that Schumpeter's work is pretty much focused on the electoral participation, the idea that the minimum component of democracy should be the electoral participation, and all other sorts of participation should be regarded as something irrational. And Carol Bateman, on the other hand, during the 1970s, she stressed the pedagogical role of civic participation, and also discussed the importance of participation within the classical works of thinkers like Rousseau and others. And I also bring to the discussion Habermas. Of course, we cannot overlook his work. And Habermas brings the importance of formal political systems being irrigated by opinion flows coming from the public sphere. Let's say that Habermas is the one that provides the normative framework for contemporary discussion of participatory institutions. And at the end, I also bring Boaventura de Souza Santos and Leonardo Vritze. Professor Vritze was my advisor during the PhD, so he will appear in many moments of the chapter. And their very important discussion of democratizing democracy. I mean, they are the ones that discuss the importance of opening up the canon of democratic theory. The way they frame the discussion. And so I think it's important to bring them to this part of the chapter. And I end this section bringing the definition of Tammy Pogrebinski and Leonardo Vritze of participatory institutions. Tammy Pogrebinski, I think she's still working in some German institution. I don't remember exactly the name of the institution she's currently working.
Yes, she
yeah, exactly.
The science center.
Yeah, exactly. And Professor Vritze has somehow kind of a more narrow definition of participatory institutions, but both of them are present in the chapter. Actually, Avritze's definition is not exactly in the chapter right now because I'm a little bit shy to admit that, but I lost his book during the time I was moving from the state from a state to another, and I still have to find it to place exactly the quotation, but I will find it. So that's the first part of the chapter. Let's say that's the stage, the theoretical stage where participatory institutions are placed. So, and the second section of the chapter, I try to bring some key characteristics of the PB, because the argument goes saying that the original experience of participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre traveled across the world, and we need to somehow have some kind of key characteristics to define them, and to be able to say that's a participatory budgeting experience and that is not participatory budgeting experience. So I start by remembering that actually there is a kind of participatory impulse in our 1988 Constitution. There are many articles in the Constitution that says that it's important to support, to provide, to empower people in different stages of policy cycle. So we can consider the Constitution, the 1988 Constitution, as a kind of participatory constitution. And so, and after that, I also bring the idea or the fact that in 1989, the PB was launched in Porto Alegre. I'm sure you're all familiar with Porto Alegre experience. I mean, it's just a kind of exemplary case that everybody, it's kind of something that you cannot simply say that I won't discuss that topic. So, but in my chapter, I try to not to focus that much in participatory budgeting in Porto Alegre, because there are many works discussing the case. So I think it's important to somehow move forward. And so I also describes the process of when PB went global during the 90s and the 2000s. And I also brings the definition that Stefani Stortoni give us, as he defines PB as an informal and autonomous yearly ongoing process of democratic deliberation and decision making, in which every ordinary citizen is eligible to participate in order to decide how to allocate part of the public budget, setting the priorities and the projects for the city through a multi-level and complex array of open and autonomous neighborhoods, regional, thematic, and citywide forums, and according to objective criteria of justice and equity. So just to be sure we are on the same page, I started by providing a kind of broad definition of participatory institutions, and then I kind of narrowed down to the definition of participatory budgeting as a specific policy instrument. Okay, the third part, this third section is what I call the PB as an object of study, and I draw a lot of in literature and specialized literature from the Brazilian scholars and also from international scholars. So somehow I think it's important to discuss PB as an instrument that helps to explain some social phenomena, and PB as a social phenomena that must be explained itself. So in the first one, treating PB as an independent variable, the literature that I bring to the discussion correlates PB with the inversion of budgetary priorities, which means that Brazilian cities during the 80s and pretty much part of the Brazilian history, the main investments of the public administration were in the richest part of the cities, and PB was somehow able to turn the tables, to invert the budgetary priorities, and the investment flow went to the poorer parts of the city. Professor Françoise Montalbot, who was my co-advisor in my PhD, she's professor at the Université de Montréal. She discusses, for instance, the importance of PB when as an instrument of overcoming clientelism in Brazil and Mexico. Some authors also discuss PB providing a generalized improvement of several quality of life indicators. Some authors discuss PB being able to somehow explain the re-election of mayors who adopt PB, the increasing of the quality of public services and public administration, and also, of course, the increasing of citizens' engagement. Well, and also important to discuss what can explain the emergence of PB in a certain city. There are a lot of works discussing this kind of ethereal concept of political will. It's hard to define precisely what political will is, but there are many authors that mentions that. Some of them discusses that there's the emergence of PB in a certain city is more likely when there are a more powerful associative tradition in the city. Some demographic and social economic variables also help to explain the emergence of PB. PB are more likely to emerge in cities with a larger budget, for instance, or also a capital of states and bigger cities and so on. And the political project of the ruling party also helps to explain the emergence of PB. Okay. The last section is very short, but actually I liked to write it because it was for me something new. You have to keep in mind that I'm dealing with the topic for the last, let's say, 15 years, and somehow it's hard for me to find something new on the field, right? And so that's something that really caught my attention. And I start this section by saying, I'm sure you are all familiar with the COP 30 that's happening right now in Egypt. And so we are witnessing the central role of climate change agenda in contemporary politics. And I bring to this section the work of Yves Caban, Professor Yves Caban, in what he calls PB sensitive to climate change. And he discusses some cases, some exemplary cases in some countries, in Africa, in Europe. So far, I think it is important to say that they did not vary in any substantive way from usual PBs, but they do have some interesting new features that I mentioned in the chapter. And I think it's also important to notice that the discussion is still incipient worldwide, and especially in Brazil, which is something interesting. I don't know what you think about it, but Brazil has one of the greatest biodiversities in the world. And actually, I couldn't find any experience of PB sensitive to climate change in Brazil, or even any experience that would somehow emphasize the topic, let's say. So I think there's a lot of room to work on that topic here in Brazil. And I thought it would be something interesting to bring to the chapter. Well, getting to my conclusions, we are living in a complex political landscape that encompasses the intensification of globalization, the democratic erosion in several countries, and the pressing issue of climate change. And this scenario, there's a post-participatory agenda. I think it's important to understand that agenda, to get into it and understand it. I mentioned as two very interesting initiatives, recent initiatives regarding participatory institutions. Those two Wikipedia-style repositories of initiatives, the Participedia and the Latino Project. Actually, I'm using both of them with my students here in Brazil. It's a very interesting way of teaching participatory institutions. And I try to end the chapter with a message, trying to go in the opposite way of some authors are saying, that PB will be vanishing in very soon, or within some years, within a few years. And what I'm trying to say is that PB is still alive, and I think it's still important to help us to reimagine the world. I think that's the final message of the chapter. Well, thank you very much. I don't know if I was too fast, but I think it's important to hear your thoughts. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was quite enlightening. For starters, to start the discussion, could you say something about the political climate that surrounded PB, explaining that it was a workers' party project, and then they went out of power? And can you elucidate this dynamic? I mean, and will it come back with Lula? Somebody had told me, and I don't remember what they said, but that the Workers' Party was now turned to other projects. I don't know what that means. Just give us something about the general political dynamic that influenced, shaped, has driven PB in Brazil.
Oh, yeah. I think it's important for the people who are not familiar with the issue that when participatory budgeting emerged in Brazil in 1989, we are in the very end of our military rule that started in 1964 and ended formally in 1985. But there was a president that was elected in 1985, but was elected by the Congress, was an indirect election. And he died before taking the office, and then the vice president took the office, and he was supported by the military, and he was the one who promoted the process of the Constitution, the 1988 Constitution. I mean, we are talking about a process of leaving dictatorship behind, and the winds of change were coming heavily in the country, and the civil society was very active, and it somehow reflected on the constitution, which is very, very progressive. We call it here in Brazil the citizen constitution, in the sense that there's many third generation, even fourth generation rights in the constitution. And so the first election to cities, the direct elections to mayors, and after the dictatorship was in 1989, and the Workers' Party was elected to two capitals in the country. One of them was in São Paulo, the largest city of the country, and the second one was in, three cities. One in São Paulo, one in Fortaleza, actually, my hometown, and one in Porto Alegre. So three of them, three important capitals of the country were ruled by the Workers' Party. And at the time, the Workers' Party was still pretty much based on labor unions and this kind of radical project of grassroots democracy. And so they just decided they tried to figure out a way to get in touch and to live up to the promises of to the people, to the electorate, right? But how actually to institutionalize participation? That was something that has required some kind of engineering, political imagination of the people at the time. And so they started by trying to experience, let's try to do that and see what happens. And they did that, and somehow it worked. And I guess it worked mainly because people were tired of clientelism. I'm pretty sure that PB is really a way to get directly to the core of the political debate, which is the administrative and municipal budget. So you simply put the political brokers aside, and you have a kind of direct opinion and direct participation in what matters most, right? Which is the money at the end of the day. So that really brought really interesting political fruits to the Workers' Party, and so they started to implement PBs in other cities. They were able to rule during the first part of the 90s, and so this gave birth to what they called the Petista way of governing, the way of governing as the Workers' Party. And so that was pretty much the story about participatory budgeting during the 90s. Something interesting happened when Lula was elected to be president in 2002, and because the Workers' Party somehow abandoned this project of direct participation at the municipal level and took it to the federal level. So Lula da Silva was the president who initiated the most number of national conferences, which are participatory instruments to interfere in public policies such as health policies, environmental policies, and that this kind of thing. Well, something that I think is worth mentioning, Frank, maybe you are not aware, I don't know, but during his most recent presidential bid, Lula, he said that he will try to implement a kind of participatory budgeting in the whole country, right? So he kind of renewed the idea of participatory budgeting. Actually, I don't know how it works, how it can work. The thing is that there's a complicated situation with the budget in the country right now. We call it the secret budget. There's a kind of tricky thing that the representatives, they did among themselves. There's a lot of corruption going on, and politicians are trying to figure out a way to, you know, to disarm this bomb. And how can they do that? So the idea is, at least in general terms, to try to set up a new kind of participatory budget in a federal level. I don't know if it works, how it works, but that's the idea right now.
What happened in the period where the conservatives came back in power? What happened to participatory budgeting when the Workers' Party went out?
Okay, at the municipal level, we cannot see. We at the municipal level, scholars were expecting when there were some kind of change of the ruling party, then they would discontinue PB. That didn't happen that often, right? So what we saw mostly in the cities that adopted PB, that was simply continuing PB with sometimes with another name, sometimes with some different methodology and so on. But the whole idea kept going. And the federal level, the things are completely different, right? I mean, since 2017, that there was when Dilma Rousseff was impeached, and then Michel Temer took the office. Since 2017, what we are seeing in Brazil is a huge process of democratic erosion in all aspects of Brazilian life and Brazilian society and Brazilian institutions since 2017. And now there are simply not any relevant policy mechanism that enhances participatory democracy in Brazil. One of the first acts of the Michel Temer's government in 2017 was to abolish all the concerns that they were legally able to do, right? So, because in 2014, 2015, Dilma Rousseff tried to push a very vigorous agenda on participatory democracy. She tried to institutionalize many councils at the federal level. And there was a huge debate in the country. It was ridiculous, but that was something that really happened in the country. The media was saying that there was a kind of Bolivarian move of Dilma Rousseff trying to implement a kind of Venezuelan-like regime. I'm saying that laughing because it's ridiculous, right? But the media somehow bought this idea and, you know, pushed this idea forward that the Workers' Party was trying to implement a kind of Soviet-like government in the country, because they were trying to institutionalize mechanisms that in some cases they exist already for 13, 15 years. So so to answer then your question, nowadays we are living really we are trying to piece all the things together, you know, because we are living in a scenario of institutional erosion and destruction in the country. That's something really sad. When Bolsonaro took the office, he said one of the first things that he said was, "I'm not here to construct anything. We are here to undo things, right? To destroy things. So things that they consider too progressive, too leftist, right? That's it."
Thank you, Rio. Just wondering, are there any clear case that the impact of the PB can challenge, for example, the market monopoly, or I mean, in the sense of the structural or system change, maybe to reprioritize the public policy, or even change the social welfare system, something like that. Any case, any story about that?
I didn't get exactly what you are asking, Piyapong. So maybe you could rephrase the question.
I mean the impact of PB so far. Are there any case that PB can challenge the structural or the system of the governing or the regime of the state? For example, to challenge the market monopolization or challenge neoliberal state, or to change the social welfare system, something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I got your question right, but as far as I got, let's put it that way. PB is not a revolutionary policy instrument, right? It won't affect structural causes, right? It won't affect structural variables. It's a very powerful instrument, right? But it's not the remedy for all democratic malaise, democratic diseases. So that's something unfortunate. But I think we have to keep in mind that Brazil is one of the most unequal societies on earth, right? The poor are very, very poor, and the rich are very, very rich. So actually, PB helps a lot to bring some kind of dignity to poor people, you know, to get the basics, you know, sewage, schools, I don't know, you know, public health. That's the basics, not the privilege. And so we call it revolutionary because it provides the basic in a country where the basic is a privilege, right? But that's a kind of people that work and study PB usually are often frustrated with the limitations of PB. And as I said, I mean, we can go just to a certain point, right? There are a lot of other structural factors that we can not even scratch with PB, right?
Let me ask Piyapong's question in a different way.
I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you did. Is there evidence that people who participate in PB become more politicized? After this experience, do they become more active based on the experience, the learning, and so forth?
Yeah. There's a lot of evidence in that sense that people get more involved in politics. There's a kind of cross-fertilization, let's say, people that comes from associations that are more likely to participate in PBs, and people go to PB and afterwards they are more likely to participate in associations, in neighborhood associations, and so forth. And that's something that we can really see and feel when you are working in a PB, because I think that the most interesting feature of PB is that open, so everybody just can go there without any barriers, you know, to participate. So that's not really something hard to participate. That's something really different from councils or conferences where you have to have some kind of policy expertise. No, if you live in a neighborhood and you are aware of the meeting, so just go there and say what you want to say. So that's something that really people I think that helps people to participate, and slowly, progressively helps people to get more politicized. I'm seeing a raising hand there.
Yeah, thank you so much for seeing my hand.
Yeah.
So I actually, because you just answered a bit of my question, so I actually would like to ask: are there any preconditions that you said that ordinary citizens can participate, right? But to me, I feel like, do I have to have the Brazil citizen, like the nationality, or do I have to have the name in that municipality area to participate? So I ask this question because I think about the big city or the metropolitan area, or even in Chiang Mai right now, we have so many kind of like migrant workers, international students, or the how to say, the foreigner who come to live here, but they don't have the name here just yet. So can this kind of people participate in that PB as well?
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. I mean, it depends on the methodology of the PB, right? So there are some PBs that are focusing on kind of thematic or topic of public policy. There are also neighborhood meetings. It depends. Most of them, I am aware of, it's really open. You just can go there, and once you are, you don't even have to live in the city, right? You are just spending some days in the city, but you can go there. So that's open in that sense. I think it's important to think about and to in terms of really the potential of the democratizing potential of PB is to think that even that there's the fact that it's open, okay, everybody can go there, but we have to think that are some people that are really so poor, so uneducated, that they are not able also to participate, right? They cannot read, they cannot they don't have I don't know, they are homeless, and so it's a very democratizing a very democratic instrument. But in some societies like ours, and I'm pretty sure that's pretty much the same in Philippines or other countries developing world, there are some people that are so poor that even those people we cannot bring to participate in politics. That's a kind of challenge, I would say. How can we mitigate? How can we bring these people to discussion? How can we overcome, for instance, language barriers? Because here in Brazil, we do not actually face this challenge as much as countries like Germany or France or really multicultural cities, where there are a lot of ethnic communities that sometimes cannot speak the local language. That's something that's worth thinking about, I think, because what we are trying to discuss here is how to democratize something that was conceived to democratize democracy, right? How to extend democracy as much as we can. That's it. Thank you for the question. Sorry.
He has a question from the Philippines.
Yeah, hello. Hello. Very nice discussion indeed. You talk about how crucial or integral the participatory budgeting, especially.
Yeah, I think it's a bit
here. Yeah, so you were talking about how integral participatory budgeting is in the cohesion of communities to affect the public decision-making bodies. So we actually have similar context in the Philippines. You talk about the widening gap between the rich and the poor, the effect of patronage and clientelism shrouding the maybe procurement processes in participatory budgeting. So my question is that, how do you envision the particular institutional response to these constraints and limitations to participatory budgeting? And if you have used existing model of participatory budgeting in your context, what are the modifications or alterations that you would want that would be very helpful in your context? Thank you.
That's a tricky question, I would say. Thank you for the question. What would be the institutional responses to the challenges? Okay, I will answer in that way. What I experienced as somebody working with PB and studying PB is that PB has some kind of powerful effect on an administrative bodies, because somehow the dogs are sorry about it. Somehow PB kind of deliver to the public administration all sorts of demands, all sorts of demands of the citizenry. And so the public administration somehow have to organize itself to respond them. And as I was working at the mayor's, the town hall of my hometown, it was something kind of funny to see that local officials were, really having a hard time to answer all the demands, right? And because there were demands that from neighborhoods that even people that were working in the town hall, they didn't know that exists in the city. And so that was something interesting to see, because what we saw there was the idea that PB somehow helps to enhance the complexity of the public administration. So I think that's a kind of collateral effect that is really helpful, right? Some representatives or some people that are against the idea of participatory budgeting, they have this kind of Weberian idea that participation, civic participation trumps or is not compatible with administrative organization, right? And somehow, I'm sorry, I'm just getting distracted by the dogs barking here. Just a minute. Just a minute. I don't know what's going on here, but it's kind of fight of the dogs. I don't know what's going on exactly. So, but just I think your question was a bit tricky to me to understand, but I kind of got this idea that I think it's important to stress that PB helps to enhance complexity within public administration. That's something that is important to understand and to emphasize.
Can I just ask one question? Who are the facilitators? I mean, the expert, the deliberative facilitator who facilitate the process. Who are they? What kind of training they have, or even their educational background? I mean, generally.
Okay. Again, it depends on the methodology of the PB. It depends.
So
the one that I worked, for instance, the one that I worked, I was the one responsible to train the facilitator, right? Along with a team, I was responsible to train that people. Usually, we're local officials that we identified as somebody that would be very communicative, that people that have facilitation skills, and somebody who was also able to to energize the people, to be able to make the word somehow kind of circulate. And so I'm pretty sure, I'm confident that training facilitators helps a lot in the process. Otherwise, the whole process will be some kind of something that's really messy, right? So when you have trained facilitators, they are able to somehow organize the people's attention to the whole process to make it flow in a proper way. So, but again, it varies very much depending on the methodology. Most of them, I would guess, that use facilitators because it helps to from the start to the end of the process to get the idea of the public budget, which is not really something easy to understand. Some methodologies, they include some kind of process of electing representatives, electing delegates. So to help the whole process to make the things getting smoother. That's the work of facilitators.
I have actually two questions.
Okay.
The first one, I'll ask them separately because they're different. You spoke toward the end on your chart of what you called the post-participatory project or trend. I'm not sure what the word was. What is that? What were you referring to there?
Okay. The post-participatory agenda is an expression from a professor, probably you know him, Adrien Laval from the USP, from the University of São Paulo. And he has a text, I think it's called the post-participatory agenda, in which he calls very, very strongly for actually kind of effort, a general effort to make strong measurements of the impact of participatory institutions in general. What he's saying is that we really have to leave normative claims regarding participatory institutions behind, and now we are after 30 years, 40 years of the first experiment. We should be able now to be very clear about the effects of participatory institutions in order to help us really to decide if they are important, if they have some kind of effect, if it is worth spending political energy to implement such institutions. So that's what he calls post-participatory agenda. So that's.
Is he unfriendly to the idea, or is it just an open research question?
It's just an open research question. I think that Professor Lavalle is one of the scholars here in Brazil that really tries to make the whole scholarship regarding participatory institutions more rigorous. So I think he's really have a point here. I mean, during the 90s it was okay to have normative claims regarding participatory institutions. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. It does have normative implications, right? But for us as political scientists, it's important to really know if if the participatory budgeting is really living up to the promises of the original idea.
And you would say yes.
Yeah, I would say yes, and he would say yes, but also very aware of the flaws, right? Very aware of the shortcomings.
So before you have a question? Any other question before I ask my last question, my second question?
Okay.
This question has to do with the point you made also toward the end. You referred to somebody who was examining the impact or uses of participatory budgeting with regard to climate change issues. And I wasn't quite sure. Could you say, you said he said or she said it was the same, but there were differences. So my first, what are those differences? And also, I think you said this wasn't in Brazil.
Oh yeah, that was not in Brazil. There was not in Brazil.
Where is it?
And some countries in Africa, like I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
There are some experiences in Nigeria, some in France.
So what did they find?
Yeah, this discussion is apparently has been moved forward by Professor Yves Caban. I think he was the chair of. Yeah, I think.
What? Yves Caban. He actually exactly. Professor in UCL, my professor.
Oh, he was a student of this man.
Okay.
University College London.
Okay.
Let us know.
Oh, that's great. That's great. He's French, right? Yves Caban?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, and he recently wrote a paper on the topic, and he is discussing some exemplary cases of PB sensitive to climate change. Some in Africa, as I said, something in Europe, and so it's as I said, it's a very incipient discussion. But what he says that it's something new is, for instance, there are some cases where, well, you can propose something to mitigate climate change in a local community, right? But somehow this proposal was not elected to be the one that will be carried out by the local government. What happens to this good idea that was not elected? So in one case that he discusses, those proposals, they go to a kind of sort of bank of ideas that can be adopted by companies that can choose to invest on them. That's one thing. The other thing is that given the fact that climate change is also related to in the world inequality, I mean, richer countries contribute more to the climate change than poorer countries. There has to have some kind of mechanisms of transferring funds from rich countries to poorer countries. And some of the experiences that he discusses in the paper, they have this kind of mechanism. That's something interesting, I would say, because let's think about the state of Pará, where I was working and living in the Amazon region, which is a very poor city. And I think that international funds would be very welcome to help the local government to implement some kind of initiative. So that's something that I really think that has it's something that local governments would be interested in having, you know. And so those are just two features that are different from the usual PB that he mentions. And that's something that I'm really planning to working on it next year here in Brazil, slowly, because I'm pretty much focusing on indigenous policy and politics here. I'm a bit far away from the topic of participatory institutions, but that's something that caught my attention, as I said, and I think it's important to understand, especially in the Amazon region, because the Amazon region in Brazil is pretty much the half of the country, right? 50% of the territory. So that's something really important. Let's see what comes from the meeting in Egypt. Let's see how the new government will work with that topic. It seems to be that's something that the new government will really invest on it, because that seems to be the key to change some structural factors, as Professor Piyapong said, you know, like the energy matrix of the country. And Brazil has huge potential on that topic. So
very interesting. Do we have an additional question? If not, I think we could leave it there. We will be speaking again.
Okay.
Along the way. This was very informative, and we thank you for taking your time. We will, in the meantime, also read your paper that you sent, and we're very appreciative of your effort here.
Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice from you. It was really good questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Tschüss.
Take care of your dog.